Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's teaching, a virtual space for us to come together and just have a quick conversation. My name is Natasha. I am the director at Raise Your Hand, Illinois. We are excited to present an opportunity to create a space where, um, you know, uh, on a Tuesday, we're really dubbing this Teach-In Tuesday, an opportunity to connect with folks in a more broad way. I would say using multimedia way of engagement. I know that you all can be many places, so whether you are joining us live or you'll catch the replay, hey, how are you? Hope that you are well. Today's discussion, we really want to check in and talk about the upcoming LSC elections. When we do these Tuesday teach-ins, we'll have relevant, intentional conversation around what's on your mind, what's on the mind of our parents, our young people, our students, community members as it relates to empowerment and community organizing across education and the intersections of it. So again, today we are focusing on LSC elections. As you all know, the upcoming elections will be held in April of this year, and folks are soon going to apply. The deadline is approaching to apply to run in that election. So I'm excited about the panel discussion that we're going to have today, which is really just to bring awareness around the upcoming election, to encourage parents, our students, community members, to really actualize democracy in CPS, right? There's a really powerful opportunity that we have with LSCs to be present in our schools, to really get the education that we know our young people, our students deserve in those hallways and classrooms that serve them as a safe haven to learn. So without further ado, I really want to welcome on the crew here today that's going to talk, round out the conversation around what LSC empowerment is in real time and how we can claim that power within us. So I'm excited to bring on Brunson here. Erica is here, Chanella, and rounding out the group, Kendra. And so we're going to engage, like I said, in conversation. We're not going to be long. We're going to be strong in this conversation around what we feel is relevant in this moment. So without further ado, I know that you all are either joining us on Facebook, YouTube, or X, formerly known as Twitter. Grab that link, repost it, share it, invite someone that is interested or curious about LSCs to tune into today's conversation. There'll be more opportunities. Today is just a springboard into using this space to have this important discussion. So without further ado, I want to transition to welcome Brunson, who's been organizing in LSCs, the local school council spaces for years. Brunson, the floor is yours to really give us some background, a little bit of history around LSC empowerment as you see it.
First of all, good afternoon, everyone. I believe it is afternoon now. Yes, good afternoon. Yeah, I've been personally working with the local school council since about 2004, 2005. And just to go back to the history, I want everyone to be aware, everyone should be aware of the fact that the local school councils came out of a bit of controversy that they were having back in the late 80s about the public school system in Chicago. I forget his name. One of the guys that was at the head of education department down in Washington had singled out Chicago as having one of the worst educational systems in the nation. And our mayor took offense at that. At that time, the mayor was Harold Washington. And that in a few other things were happening. The school system was just recovering from one of the longest teacher strikes that it had ever had in its history. There were a lot of things going on at once. So the mayor called together an educational summit because he wanted to get the public involved in figuring out what would be the best way to go to help the Chicago public school system recover so that we could build a better school system. And this summit involved people from the public, people from all ranks of society. They just came together. Unfortunately, Mayor Washington, Harold Washington, did not live to see the results of this summit. He died before it was completed. But the summit completed, and the idea of the local school councils came out of this educational summit that was held by the public here in the city of Chicago. It was pretty much something ahead of its time. It was a very democratic organization. Their solution to the problems in the Chicago public school system was to get the parents and the community and the teachers and the administrators in the school all involved, put them all at the same table with a certain amount of rights and responsibilities. And that was to be the governing body of the school, pretty much so, the governing body of the school. So what we had was a very democratic organization composed of 6 parents, 2 teachers, 1 principal. I believe it was 1 student at the beginning also. And this was pretty much they were to have these monthly meetings to go over things like the budget and some of the things that were going on in the school. In other words, to help set the policy of the school. And they were going to be held responsible for the academic success and performance and success of the school also. So this was pretty much a revolutionary idea. And when we had the first elections, I believe they were in 1988. I had read somewhere where they were some of the largest democratic elections in the history of this country because so many people were involved. We had thousands of people involved in these elections, and so this was, the local school councils were set up in 1988. Something happened around 1995 though that changed it. My understanding is that the Republicans had taken over down in Springfield because, the educational policy is determined at the state level in Springfield by law. And the Republicans had taken over and they put in a few changes of what was going on in Chicago. They put in a few rules to change the Board of Education here in Chicago. One of the most significant rules was instead of having a superintendent, Chicago went to having a CEO in charge of the school. Now, the difference is a superintendent has an educational background. A chief executive officer does not necessarily have to have an educational background. So that was a big change right there. And there were a few other things, like they restricted some of the powers of the local school councils. I can't recall right now what exactly they were, but the powers of the local school councils were significantly restricted from what they were originally. So those are the 2 key dates that I have in my mind: 1988 when they first came about from the summit, and 1995 when you had the big change. But in the meantime, like I said, I came across the local school councils back in 2005, where I met a lot of the original people that were pushing for them in the summit. So I guess I have a more radical idea than most about what the local school councils are supposed to be doing and what they're supposed to be held responsible for. Because I do believe the local school council should be the governing body of the school, and the principal is someone that sits on that governing body as a member and not the person in charge of the local school council. And I'd like to emphasize that, because when people don't know the actual rules and the structure of the local school council, or what the actual intention was, you end up with a local school council that is pretty much controlled by the administration of the school, and that's not the way it's supposed to go. Now, I don't want to talk too long. I'll just start with that, and then we can move on, and then I'll come in later.
Yeah, that's really great. Just going back, I think we're in our 34th year, if my math is right, of local school councils in the city, and we see that this is an opportunity to have a discussion and dialogue around like what's at stake in this moment, what opportunities are ahead of us, and so for those of you all who have served on LSCs or attended LSC meetings, I think it's good to have a plethora, a diversity of voice, I would say. So let's jump into the discussion. I have some guiding questions that I would love to jump in and get us started. So I think we can um, start with you, Brunson. I think it makes sense to do that. If you can just share a little bit about yourself, your LSC experience, and what I think the prompt here is what got you interested in LSCs.
Well, let me see. I started with the local school councils back in 2004. That's 2004, 2005. I don't know how I heard about them. I just ended up in some community meeting. At that time, I was a teacher. I was teaching out in Argyle Gardens, and I became more interested in the whole milieu of education to see what was determining the policies and everything. And I don't know how I found out about local school councils, but I ended up going to a meeting of a group called Designs for Change. Designs for Change was one of the original research groups that did a lot of research on the local school councils and was really promoting them. And I went to one of their meetings, and that's where I found out about them. I also met other people from some of the original groups, some of the original proponents that were pushing the local school councils. Like there was another group called Pure Parents United for Responsible Education with Julie Westhoff. They were pretty strong on that. And then there was another group that was spun off from Designs for Change called Southside United, where they inducted me and a few other people to try to start building more of an awareness of the local school councils in the South Side of Chicago. And we were also, trained not at that time by Chicago Public Schools, but I was trained by some of the original people that helped put the local school councils together. These are the people from groups like Designs for Change and Pure and all of that. And I was trained by them before I was trained by Chicago Public Schools. But I fell in love with the idea because I've always believed that democracy is the greatest political invention that we've ever had. Everyone is supposed to have a voice in what goes on in their community, some of the major decisions for their community. I've never believed that that one that lives hundreds of miles away should be making decisions about what happens to you and your community. So I like that whole idea of participatory democracy. So I was all in on it. And when I would go out and speak about the local school councils, I would always emphasize a few things. One was that the importance of grassroots participatory democracy for really, moving things in the direction that you want your community to go, and making people realize the fact that once you do become a local school council member, you are an elected official, just like an official of the city council or something like that. You are an elected official with certain duties, powers, duties, and responsibilities, And I think that's important for people to know, because if you don't know that, and because in some communities I've noticed that people are kind of like awed by these administrative positions and everything. And so you go into a local school council meeting and there, you have the professionals running the meeting. It's not very democratic. But everyone is supposed to be equal. We need all of those different perspectives. We need the perspective of the parents and of the community and of the administrator and the students. So I like the way that it's been put together to give everyone a voice in the school.
Thank you for that. Chinella, jump in. Share a bit about yourself and what got you interested in LSEs.
Hey y'all, my name is Chinella Miller. I am a mother of seven. I still have three that are still in CPS. Um, what got me started was my son Khalil, honestly. He went to a high school called Diet, Walter H. Diet. He was actually part of the fight to reopen Diet. And upon its reopening, he, just wanted to play a role. He has always been very active in um, fighting for what he believes is right. And so it was the first LSC that started with the reopening of the school. And so they needed the parents and the community members and the students to come together to make sure that the school was what they intended for it to be. And so he asked me to run with him. We actually ran as a slate. There were several of us. We ran as a slate. And so that was what really got me started. Just seeing my son, and then realizing that we're all stakeholders. Um, it's not just the school administration that has the say so, that should be making the decisions. It is the community, it is the parents, it is the students that should be discussing what works best for them, what they should and should not have, what they do need in their schools, and who should be running the schools as well. And so yeah, I stayed on the LSC there at Diet until he graduated. He graduated 2 years ago, and just it was just very important for me to play a part in making sure that my child received a world-class education, is what really got me started and interested in local school councils.
Hi, I'm Erica. I'm a CPS parent as well. I have a daughter in third grade. She goes to a neighborhood school in Belmont Cragen. Initially, I started learning about LSCs through Raise Your Hand. I didn't know they existed even when I was a CPS student. I never realized that local school councils were a thing, and I don't think my parents knew either. So I wanted to learn more about what these meetings look like, who was part of it, what did my LSC look like at my daughter's school. I find that I get a lot more information out of that than the emails that they send to the school, as like weekly updates, or even just talking from the teachers. I feel as if I get kind of a more broader view of what's happening in the school, and just looking at the relationships that exist between teachers, parents, and administration. And just really looking at how students are doing as well. You learn about what parents are involved and who you can reach out to learn more. And just, I feel like it's important for me to stay there so they could see that there's parents who are not members who are interested in what's happening in the school, even if I can't volunteer as much or be as present as others, but just to show them that, I'm kind of looking at what's really happening in the school. I'm interested in my daughter's education. I want to be more involved. And I think that's important. So it's been a really good thing to go every month. I go as much as I can, and I've volunteered here and there as well, which is really trying to stay more involved with what's going on in the back end of the school. You won't really get that just by, again, reading like their emails or even talking to the people in the office or just by one teacher, but you could really see how these relationships are playing out in your child's school.
Good afternoon, y'all. I am Kendra. I am also a CPS parent and a parent organizer with Raise Your Hand. And what brought me to LSCs was I was one of those years ago who did not believe in them. Thought they was just meetings that a bunch of people just came to because they ain't had nothing to do. So once I started learning and taking the modules and just learning the power that parents should have in the school, it drew me in. And it was like, I didn't see LSCs ran correctly, and I wanted to be part of that change. And that's what brought me in to say, like, look, parents, we need to get together. Community, we need to come together. We need to do this correctly. And that's just really about the shortest way I can do it. Seeing it done wrong, I wanted to be part of the reason that it's done correctly.
That's real. Thank you for naming that. Could say so much about LSCs. We have these discussions with parents around running for LSC. Perhaps at some point over the last 34 years that LSCs have existed, they've experienced or have, poor experiences. And then when we drill down into that and we're asking those questions of like, what was the experience like? Let's talk through it. Oftentimes it's an LSC that lacked training, so they weren't efficient, right? It was an LSC that, perhaps didn't take training together, which is a huge best practice and benefit, to be able to have understanding, particularly around the CIWP and the budgets. And so, for a lot of parents who have had those, previously less than, great experiences, seeing them come back into the fold and be willing to jump in for the same reasons Kendra said, to be a part of the change so that we have certified community trainers, and spaces like this where we can talk about what LSC empowerment truly is. Brunson, I want to bring you back up. Instead of jumping in, I want everyone, if we can, to just sort of keep the conversation going. Question number 2 is, what does LSC empowerment look and feel like in real time to you?
No, I had the opportunity of going to a number of different local school councils at different, let's say, socioeconomic statuses within the city. So you might go to one community where the parents are, most of the parents are people that just had a high school education, or maybe didn't even have that or something. Some of the so-called lower income areas, and they don't have they don't have as much of the educational background as other people, so they sit on the local school council, and they may not have even had a lot of their training, and they tend to let other people do most of the talking. They tend to regard the administrator, i.e. the principal, as being the boss. And it's not a very democratic attitude that they have. Or you might have one where they want to push their power, but they don't know how the rules go, and then you just have a lot of conflict. Then I've been to other communities where you got mostly like doctors and lawyers and businessmen in that community and everything. So you go into the local school council meeting, and you better believe everybody sitting at that table is equals. They're not looking at the principal as somebody up on high. The principal is just another person sitting up in there, and it's they all have this certain amount of professional respect towards each other, that I don't see in certain other places. So it depends on, but I think the deciding factor most of all is not the personal educational attainment of the person, or social standing of the person on the local school council. To me, the basic thing is to know and to understand all of the rules that govern that local school council, and most importantly, understand that you as a member of that local school council have just as much political power or personal power, whatever, as anyone else sitting on that local school council, including the principal. So that's extremely important, that people get sufficient, not just sufficient training, but have a sufficient understanding of the purpose and the philosophy of a local school council, to understand what it really means to have something like grassroots democracy operative within an institution.
Chanela, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Bronson made some good points. And I think that it is very important to attend other schools, local school council meetings, because you really get to see the differences. I have been in meetings where they went 2 hours, they went 3 hours, they went to the point where we had to adjourn and come back in 2 days. And it was mainly because to be quite honest, a lot of people didn't know their roles. I have been in school, I have been at meetings where the principal sits and runs everything, and that's not the point. Me personally, in some of the meetings that I had been in when I was on the local school council, especially when it came to the budget, there were things that we just were not experienced in, truthfully. And yes, we did take the trainings, but we didn't have a full grasp or understanding of what was going on. And so I think that LSC Empowerment is working together. There were times where I look back where, again, there were things that we were not sure about, that in my mind, if I was the principal, I would have helped out. Well, this is what should have been going on, or this is what you should be looking at, to assist. And when people hold on to that knowledge or hold on to that power, that's an issue. So I think that LSC Empowerment and it looks and feels like working together, understanding that at the core, the main thing that we are working on is to provide a world-class education for our students. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what education that you have. I've been in meetings where they're appointing someone, and the people that are running for a certain position are listing off all of their degrees, but have not mentioned how they feel about the students, or what they want to do to make the school better. They're talking about their degree in financing and their degree in psychology, but not really what they are bringing to the table to, again, provide a better space of safety and comfort and better academics for our youth. So that's what LSC Empowerment looks like for me. Thank you so much, Bronson, for bringing that up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that has been said. A lot of this, in my mind, ties back to power and really distributing that power amongst all the members. I know I'm not an LSC member. I'm actually thinking of running possibly this year, but as a parent who's sitting in on these meetings, the space hasn't always been the most welcoming, especially because they thought that I was a child, that I was a student, and so obviously there was some adultism that played out there. And actually made me really hesitant to come back to an LSC meeting. But I think what really would make an important part of LSC is recognizing that everyone in this space has valuable experiences that they bring to the table, and that everyone here is for a common goal, and that's to give students a really good education, to care for the school community, to be able to fight for resources together, and really thinking about how you are going to do that with everyone's different perspective and values that they bring into the space. But again, tying this back to power, is just everyone has the power to be part of this change. You don't need a degree to know that there's something systemically wrong with what's going on at your school, or that your students need some more resources, or that your school needs more funding, right? You can see that through your lived experiences, and that is valuable enough. And so that's what I see the power in LSCs, is that people are able to bring that into the space. And you don't need a degree to be able to show that in your care for the school. So I think it's a lot about the distribution of power, really allowing people who, systemically aren't given a lot of access or a lot of power, giving them that space to lead the meetings, or to, bring an idea to realization, to fruition, right? Like to really make it happen and support them in doing that. So, yeah. Kendra?
I was just going to jump in really quick before Kendra, and I just wanted to also highlight that LSC Empowerment also includes the trainings, making sure that you are taking those trainings. Yeah, you do need to make sure you take them 6 months after you're elected, but to keep up with those trainings, things do change. And it's important to just make sure that you know how to, especially, and that's why I'm saying this, because the budget, that was my big issue when I was on the LSC. And it was maybe back in August the last time I checked, but there were 4% of principals on the LSCs. There are about 600 schools in CPS, and there were only 4% principals that had actually taken all those modules for the LSC training. So it's very important for all of us, not just the students that are on the LSC, not just the community and the parents, but the principals as well, to keep up with those trainings, because empowerment is having the knowledge to know what you should be doing, knowing the policies and procedures, and knowing how to move things the way that they should, so that things are just done properly and it doesn't come back on the school or makes things harder for everyone. And thank you so much for that, Kendra.
Yeah, I agree with all the comments that were made. My thought on what empowerment looks like is parents that look like me, that talk like me, that live like me, that have those kids, that build that the reason that the principal is there, that the teachers are there, to know their power in the school. I expect them to be trained, of course. That would be, ideal that everybody is on the same level of, on the same page, and you get that with the training. But really, like, that's the best way I can answer that. Like, like Mr. Brunson said, you go in these rooms, you see the principals, they sitting at the head of the tables, they're running things, and we have, like, it's like a puppet show that all of the parents are literally just, yep, yes, yes. Back to, like, the budget training, they throw these numbers out. We don't know what these numbers or lines mean, and everybody just agreeing. So to me, it looks like parents learning policy, parents learning what these things mean, taking these training and actually getting in tune of what's really going on in their school. Because again, if you see it done the correct way, and then you come into our schools and we see it done incorrectly, it's discouraging. And it's like, I'm wasting my time. And that's why we don't have parents to sit on it, because it's like, well, what am I here for if I'm just, just here to say yeah, or I'm gonna sign my signature to say that I agree with this, and you don't even know what you're agreeing to. So empowerment means train professional parents. Because I tell people that all the time, I'm a professional mama. Like, can't nobody do that better than me. Like the principal think they run the school, I'm gonna run these kids, and that's how I take it. I guess we go to the next question, Mr. Brunson.
I can check in. So the next question would be, why do you think it's critical or crucial for parents, students, and community members to run in the upcoming 2024 LSC election?
To run, why do we think it's crucial for parents and students to run in the election?
Yes.
As I had stated earlier, when the local school councils first came about, they were extremely popular because we had hundreds of thousands of people, over 100,000 people that were running for local school council positions. As the years have gone down, especially recently, people have been losing interest in the local school councils. They don't have the same amount of interest and enthusiasm for the local school councils that they had like 20 years ago or something like that. And as a matter of fact, the last few rounds of elections, I can think of the last 2 or 3 times they have had elections, they've had to extend the dates of the elections because they didn't have enough people that seemed to be interested in joining, running for local school councils anymore. And even now, after the elections are over and the seats have been filled, you can look at all these various schools. If you can go online and check on different local school councils. You'll see there are a lot of local school councils that might have parents missing, community members missing, students missing from them, teachers missing from them. We don't have a lot of full local school councils. If you ask me, I think the local school council movement is struggling. And so much of that has to do with the fact that the basis, we have to remember, the local school council comes from the public. It comes from the community. It is not a creation of Chicago Public Schools. It simply is not. And somehow, through the course of the history of these local school councils, Chicago Public Schools has pretty much taken over, how the local school councils are trained and run and all of that. Because at the beginning, you had all these different organizations that were training. You just didn't, it wasn't just CPS that was training you for a local school council. And you get a different flavor when you get a training from someone that is community based rather than someone that is a bureaucrat within the CPS structure. There's a different feeling to it and everything. So, I think what we have to do is take it back to its roots. We have to, as parents, community members, and students and teachers, we have to really start getting involved in these local school councils again and have our own meetings. Yeah, we'll get the training, get the certified training, but it has to go beyond the certified training, I believe. Like someone had mentioned, the budget. You can't just wrap your head around the master a budget with one session of training from the local school councils. I think people need to just sit down, talk to other people that have worked with budgets, discuss these things within your school or with other experts to really get it down, because that budget is an important document for the guidance of that school. But I would also propose that I think different local school council members themselves, we should be meeting amongst ourselves. Local school councils from different school members from different schools should be coming together in some type of venue where we can sit down and talk about, hey, this is what's going on my local school councils. These are our challenges. This is what I see needs to happen with everything. We need to be talking to each other, because this thing of it being completely run from within CPS, it just simply doesn't seem to be working. And my proof of that is the loss of enthusiasm for these local school councils as we've gone through history. So yeah, I'm proposing that we start meeting with each other and talk and discussing these things on our own.
And then again, to Mr. Brunson's point, this is why it's important to go to other LSC meetings so that you see how they are ran, because what's going on in your meeting might not be efficient, might not be working. And I agree, we should be able to have a space where we can meet, congregate, and be in community with each other. But it's important. It's important and crucial for parents and students and community members to run, because it's their voice that matters. Again, we have so many schools where it is principal or administration run, and that's not how it should be. The LSC was created for us, to give us power, and they're taking away that power. It's the systematic forcing parents out of schools that's keeping us from running. Even me, I was just recently on a local school council. I won't name the school that my child is in now, but the reason that I'm going back and forth with, do I want to run, is because I know that my views are completely different from the people that are running that school views. I'm still thinking about it though, so we'll see. But I even just earlier today had a friend tell me something similar. She was recently on the LSC and she didn't run again. And she just told me that she doesn't plan on running again because she knows that her running for the local school council would put a target on her child's back. And that's just like, that's crazy. Because again, these spaces were made for us, the stakeholders, to make sure that the schools are running the way that they should be. So it's very important. Our voices matter. I'm so happy that that students can be on the LSC in elementary school now as well, because they need to learn that, again, they have a voice. It is their school. They go to that school. They walk those halls every day. So they know what's going on. They know what is working. They know what's not working. So their voices need to be heard. So even if you think that maybe being on the school council, maybe you won't be listened to, or I don't want to use the word afraid, but you don't want to go back and forth and have that combat with those people, the administration usually, who are blocking the changes that need to be happening. I urge you to please still run. Your voices are needed, your voices are heard, and we are here attempting to make spaces for us to collaborate so that we can work together and make the changes that need to be made in our schools.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's why I'm hesitant to run as a candidate. I've already had to talk to the principal administration multiple times about things that have been happening at my daughter's school in her classroom, and I really feel like I'm kind of agitating them a little bit, and her teacher. But it's really just I think it comes back to a lot of just accountability, right? Like, these are our students, our children. We deserve to know what's happening. You're not allowed just to do whatever you want just because you're running, you're being paid to take care of the school and to really manage it. But parents still have the right to know what's happening. Obviously, whatever happens to students at school is going to affect them. It's going to come back home. It's things that also are happening in the community affect students, whether they're in school or at home. Those things really do matter. So for me, I see it as a lot as, it's important to make sure that these people are being held accountable for the managing of money, for the managing of resources, for how they're educating your children. And as parents, it's important for us to be involved. Who would we be if we are not involved in our children's lives and what's happening in their childhood? All these years are really important for how they're going to grow up, and it's going to impact the rest of their lives. So of course it's important to stay there. And just thinking of the power dynamics with that accountability piece, it's that's the reason why LSCs were created, right? There was a lot of corruption that was happening back in CPS and even in recent years. And so one way to really stop that and prevent that is to making sure people have a say in what's happening, and not just to say, but being allowed to make changes and see those changes being followed through on. So that's the why I attend LSC meetings, kind of just to really show, like, I'm still here, I'm listening. And I know I haven't been welcomed. I think even as a younger parent, it's a little makes me really nervous. I feel like a lot of the parents there have more experience than I do, or they volunteer a lot more. They have kind of stronger relationships with admin, or who knows what they think about younger parents. But I think it's important just to stay there to show that, hey, I'm not going anywhere, even if you haven't been that welcoming, or maybe I agitate you a little too much, but just to really show them I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon.
Listening to Erica and Chinella's answer made me think about the reasons why you really do run. And even if, not even if, because you don't want your child picked on, but that just, to me, that makes you stronger. If you feel like, I need to be here because things aren't right, but you don't want a person to, I've seen it. My child I felt like targeted because of my strong presence on the local school council, but it didn't stop me. Because I want you to know that I'm here. I'm watching what you're doing. I'm listening. I'm speaking on it, and you not get like it's just not gonna happen. So I feel I'm really leaning to always saying fight, because I'm a fighter. So I'm gonna always go with that narrative. But on the same strength, it's like, if enough parents speak up and enough parents are involved and enough community come, then it won't be you fighting alone. It won't be like, you can't mess with all the kids. You can't, you can't do these things because you don't want it to appear that way. And because I know that it happens that way, that, we have to still change that narrative. Like, you can't pick on my kid because I'm saying what's right. Again, my biggest thing with schools is, I remember, I've been a mom for a long time, very long time. And I'm a grandma, and I'm gonna be doing this I got 7 kids too. So I'm gonna be doing this school thing for a long time because I'm an active mom and I'm going to be an active grandmother. And anybody know I don't play about my grandkids. So it's we're in there. Back in the day, you had parents in the schools. You had parents that were at PTA meetings. You had parents that volunteered. You had all of these things, but you don't see that now. So if you join together, and those were the parents in the local school councils. So now, with the trainings that can come up and all of those things, now you have those parents, you have those trainers, and you just have a powerful force if we all just bond together. And that's what that's what I'm fighting for. That's my end result in it, to have a well-ran LSC on the south side, on the west side, to where everybody know that, our kids deserve what any other kid get. Child, not kid. But yeah. Those are my thoughts. And
thank you, Kendra. Thanks, everyone. This is dope. This has been a great conversation, really, to just ground ourselves in, there's so much work, really with the collective understanding that our schools, that our children experience are better when we are actively involved. The local school council is the most democratic, actually the largest governing body in the nation, quite honestly. Where parents are elected, where community members that have an interest, that live in that attendance boundary, are invested and can run and help co-govern and improve the academic experience in our schools. So it's a really revolutionary idea, dating back to the 80s. And we have a real moment to be able to, stand in this leadership opportunity right now. So applications are coming due February 8th, no later than 3 p.m. at the school you intend to run. So if you are interested in running for local school council, we would invite you to look at the criteria to run. You should see here in just a moment a link in the chat that will take you to the Chicago Public Schools website, where you can apply for LSC to learn more about who's eligible, etc. So as we move to wrap up, I want to share just a couple more links, and then would invite those of y'all on here that would love to maybe share a final wrap, just a final wrap up comments before we break. And then I'm going to invite everyone. So you should see the link in the chat to take you to where you can learn more about running in the upcoming LSC election. If you aren't already connected to Raise Your Hand, stay tuned to our social media and perhaps our website, where you'll be able to engage with us in the upcoming events. We're going to be having in-person workshops to kind of go over the basics of LSCs. We'll dig a little bit more into the power that LSCs have, the decision-making that LSCs can make in schools. And then we get into some candidate support, like what does it look like to, from tip to tail, run for LSC in the upcoming election. So we'll be hosting that on February the 6th and February the 7th as an opportunity for those who need a application. We'll have those in the space where it'll be available in English and in Spanish. And if you need support with filling out those applications, we'll be able to do that with you. So I dropped that link in the chat for our upcoming events. Would love for you all to engage and to join us in the space to learn more about LSCs, the power that it holds for parents, community, particularly students. At the high school level, there are 3 students that can run for LSC. At schools that have a 7th and 8th grade, students can run, they must serve in the 7th and 8th grade, either 7th or 8th grade that are on the LSC. One student serves at the elementary level. So again, I'm really excited for this opportunity to engage with y'all in this virtual space. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we move to wrap up, would invite any final closing thoughts from this dynamic panel. Brunson, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just want to say this. I can't say enough of how important I think these local school councils as an institution is, because I think we have like 3 or 4 people that sit on the city council now of Chicago that started out in local school councils. I know a couple of them. We have people in elected officials in the Illinois state representatives. There's an Illinois state representative that was a local school council. For those of you that might know me, I was a former officer of Chicago Teachers Union, so I got to meet with a lot of politicals and official people and all of that. And I met one of the governors of the state of Illinois, Quinn. Used to brag. He found out how I was into local school councils, and he used to brag to me about, yeah, I used to be on my local school council. So, and I'm saying all this to say that local school councils are an extremely important introduction to politics in general. You learn how to do politics, and you learn how politics work. And that's something that we all need in our community, so that we can get better resources, not just for our schools, but for our communities also, and for our city. So I can't say enough about how important local school councils are, and I'm extremely happy to see younger people get involved in them, because that's what it's all about. They're the ones that need to learn how this government works, because they're going to have to turn this government around to have it work for them, for their generation. So that's my final thoughts.
Thank you for that, Bronson. Because yeah, I feel the exact same way. Didn't even think about politics that deeply until I got on the LSC, and now I am trying to figure everything out. So I appreciate that, that being on the LSC brought that out in me. But our children deserve a world-class education, and it takes all of us to make sure that we get that. So it is important that our parents and our community run. And if you are a parent that has a child, if they're in elementary school in 7th and 8th grade, encourage them to run too. They should be involved in this. The high school students should be involved, because again, they're going to need this. They need this for their future. They need to understand how politics works as well. And even though I said a bunch of stuff about how I dread the budget, it's not as daunting as you think it is. If that's a reason that's keeping you from running, don't let it be. There are plenty of spaces. Raise Your Hand is one that can provide the support that you need, but your voice matters. And then the last thing, coming from a queen procrastinator. Yes, the deadline is February 8th, but do not wait until February 8th. Just in case you get to that school and you're missing something important, please try and turn in those applications immediately. I know that back to what Natasha said, please continue to follow Raise Your Hand, because I believe that they'll be doing some things to make sure to help out with the paperwork. If it becomes we want to make sure that those candidate statements are very, very important. So follow spaces where you know that you can get the support and guidance that you need to run, because it is important.
So awesome. Stay tuned to our social media. We're going to drop all of the links that we posted here during this conversation. I think we'll also include a map and a way for you all and directions to see where you can run if you're not sure. So if you're a parent, of course, you're going to run at the school where your student attends. But if you're a community member, we'll share a tool where you can put your home address that'll tell you a list of schools that you can run as a community member. So stay tuned to our social media. Again, you have access to us. We're going to be hosting those in-person workshops. We've dropped the link in the chat. So if you aren't already, aware, we're across all social media at IL Raise Your Hand. And we'll be posting links and graphics so that you can join us and invite others in your school community to join us as well. Open to all current LSC members and prospective who are looking to run and really, center power and empowerment in your school and communities. Thanks, y'all, for joining us. We'll see you soon for what we call these Teach-In Tuesdays. Be well, take care of yourself, be kind.